Opposition, we have Avtomat. In opposition, we have Sarvottam. I am Tamim. I'll be your chair for this round, and I'll ask my panelists to one by one introduce themselves. Jawad, Martin, Stefan, Vansh, are any of you guys here? You guys can start by introducing
Hi
yourself.
everyone, I'm Ajudicators for this. Hi everyone, I'm Ajudicators.
Hello, my name is Lance. I'm one of your panelists. Good luck for the round, guys.
Jawad and Martin, are you guys here? Tag them on WhatsApp. Let's just wait a bit for them.
Wait, do you need us to submit our speaker order?
I don't really need to, but you can still post it in the chat.
All right, cool.
Martin, are you here? You can start by introducing yourself. All right, I think Jawad and Martin is in the call. I would be very pleased if Jawad and Martin can introduce themselves, and then we can start on with the debate.
Sorry, did you say we could start?
Hey, I'm the Novice final panelist, Jawad Ahmed. I'm here.
All right, thank you, Jawad. We're just missing out on Martin. Martin, can you confirm if you're here?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, we are still waiting on Martin. Martin, can you confirm if you're here?
Hi there, OC here. I think if Martin does not reply in the next few seconds, I think we can just proceed without him.
Yeah, is that okay from Cap?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Let's just wait one more minute. All right, I think we're already behind schedule. Martin is not responding, but we have to go and start the debate without them. So sorry for the extremely long panel introduction. Let's get started with some housekeeping before we start. Number one, please time yourself. The panel is going to be busy in terms of taking notes and hence won't be able to give you pointers. So in order to keep track of your time, please time yourself. Secondly, do not exceed your given time limit. So anything after 7 minutes and 15 seconds will not be recorded. Thirdly, when you go up to speak, please introduce yourself and also mention how you want your POIs to be, and also mention the panel as a whole. With all of that said, let's hope for a great Prime Minister. Without any further ado, I invite you to take on.
Tamim, I kept here, Tamim. So sorry. Do you want to check if Martin is here now?
Martin, are you here?
I'm here.
Yeah. I think Martin is here. That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks.
All right, Prime Minister. Without any further ado, Prime Minister, ready whenever you are.
All right, thanks. My POIs, I would like them to just like unmute and ask them if I say so. Okay. Time will start on my first word. I think it's quite intuitive that us living in Singapore or in the world in general know how it is to feel the burning need for study, to feel the burning need to better ourselves to get a job, right? Quite intuitive that the exact problem with this status quo that side proposition and side government wants to tell you guys today is that honestly, the main problem is that you're only viewing it as a way to get a good job, right? And you're not actually using it because you want to do well. With that said, here's the setup for side government. First, what exactly do we think are the origins of this narrative that you have to study to do well in the first place, right? We think that the main origin of the narrative actually tends to be very discriminatory in nature, in the sense that most of the time it just comes about because you see people that are less well off than you, because you see what other people have to go through, and you think that you just don't want to be like that. We think that the fact that this tends to be the basis for this entire claim that you should use your life just for your future so that you can study better and get a good job is exactly the reason why in status quo there just doesn't seem to be enough recognition for jobs that tend to pay a bit less, or jobs that tend to make you a little bit more underprivileged, as important as it may be, right? Okay, so what exactly do we think this glorification of studying may look like? It looks like having to lose your sleep grinding homework and revising. It looks like having to beat yourself up because you got an A2 instead of an A1 for your test exams, right? Studying only pertains to academic material. It only pertains to your schoolwork that's highly like academic in nature. That this just means it's not very holistic, right? This meaning of studying only pertains to your high schoolwork, classic schoolwork that's very still highly likely the maths kind of things. It doesn't end up being more of your holistic development or other things that you want to do as your extracurriculars, right? And we think that something else that's very harmful about this studying that comes with this narrative is that it's very normalized and that it's very glorified. We think that, for example, youth nowadays having apps that track their study timings and thinking that it's a great thing that they've studied for 10 straight hours that day no thank you, is also a manifestation of this, wherein we think it is extremely harmful that you're wasting so much time just studying such that you just lose your whole sense of self, right? So what exactly do we think these good jobs that people are studying for tend to look like? We think that they're very stereotypical, prestigious jobs that people over-glorify. Common examples, for example, in Asian society would be law and medicine, wherein people's parents tell them, yeah, you should go and be a doctor, a lawyer, because it pays really well. And because people normally associate them with like a high academic standard of work, people often think that just because you manage to get into that kind of job, that means you're incredibly well educated, you're incredibly well to do, and it just becomes a means for people to pass judgment on your character without actually knowing anything about you. And these are why these jobs are so over glorified, and that's why we think that like just because you're getting because you're getting judged for this, it just means that it's not very fair to you, right? But it also ends up being one singular kind, like sort of line of work that people are forced to follow, that people are inclined to follow, genuinely not because they want it, but because society has conditioned them into thinking then that's the only goal and the only endpoint that they should be working towards, right? So let's look at what the people in our society look like, right? It's very important to recognize that people have a lot of varied abilities, for example, due to their socioeconomic backgrounds or due to the way that they're taught, due to the way that their brain is wired and their interests, right? It is in this society that we were designed to flourish in the first place, the kind of society where everybody does something different and hence we all contribute to each other's lives, right? But with this narrative, everyone's literally forced to flock to these good, so-called good jobs that have already characterized for you, that people only think that this is the only way to go, and hence this diversity isn't necessarily adhered to, even though everybody is slightly different, and even though everybody may not be actually suited to these jobs that are so put on a pedestal, right? We think that people deserve to study for the acquisition of knowledge alone and to genuinely better themselves, not just to fit into society, not just so that they can make a few extra bucks at the end of their time in school. Before I move on, yes, I'll take that point.
Why do you assume people are going to be forced to study at the cost of sleep under our side of the house? This is comparative. What is your counterfactual?
The counterfactual on our side is that we think that people are genuinely forced to study for it because of the societal narrative that's put forward, right? Because the societal pressure. The counterfactual, right, is that on your side of the house, people study solely for the narrative, but on our side of the house, what we want to do is for people to study because they genuinely have something that they want, because they want to better themselves. So as to say, they want to study because they genuinely care about the subject that they're studying. We also think that studying doesn't necessarily have to look like academics. This motion and the narrative only glorifies the academic sense, right? We think you could be studying stuff that are completely unrelated to your normal academic tracks if it means something that you're interested in, and if it means bettering yourselves genuinely outside of just trying to get a better job, right? So we think that so moving on then from the POI, we think that as somebody in society, you should be allowed to pursue your own diversity and something that's completely different, right? So let's talk about what exactly are the impacts and the manifestations in society as a whole. It looks like discriminating on a bunch of people, and which is not fair because they may have just not have had the means to reach that level of education or to reach that level of prestige in a job, right? Because this could be due to reasons like their socioeconomic backgrounds being less privileged and just being less able to get into a good educational institution. Or it looks like, for example, people that are more interested in other things rather than like instead of medicine, they're just more interested in like stuff like, I don't know, not political science, but like humanities, right? And sometimes it's just less glorified in society, which means that they just don't get the recognition for what they're doing, even though they may be equally as impressive, right? So this is just a way for society to excuse discrimination. This is a way for society to excuse us like just putting some jobs on a pedestal and thinking that some people are inferior just for the jobs that they take, right? It also alienates anyone who wants to pursue another path, and this is particularly harmful because there are a lot of meaningful jobs out there that are extremely important. For example, working on the police force, or people who work in the civil service, people who just work in like restaurants or or at supermarkets, who are actually keeping our society running because these are literally essential services, but because they pay less and because they are viewed as less prestigious, less educated, which are all discriminations put forward by society, not actual facts, by the way. It ends up being extremely discriminating. It ends up meaning that anyone who may want to pursue art and music instead of just law and medicine ends up just being alienated because society doesn't validate this. So we think that for side opposition, we just need them to prove to us how they can prioritize the sanctity of studying and protect people's interests genuinely, instead of just using studying as a means to an end to get a better job that may not even be better and to earn more money, right? So insofar as side proposition and side government has been able to prove to you exactly why it's so harmful and discriminatory in people and how it doesn't protect the actual meaning of studying, we think that we have won this debate by leaps and bounds, and hence
I thank the Prime Minister for their amazing address to the House. I would like to invite Leader of Opposition to address.
Yeah, just give me 30 seconds. I'll get my time. Cool. I'm audible.
Yep, you're audible to me.
Cool. My name is Kevin. I will be going as leader of opposition. UI preference, I will take one from GovBench at 5th minute. Unmute and ask. I won't be seeing the chat. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. What is the comparative, since government bench never words it properly? I think when you don't tell people that you have to study, you let people do what they want. They just say you can study if you want to, but that applies to other fields as well. Just say that if you don't want to study, I never understand why people want to study anymore, right? Which is to say that other people may want to play basketball, other people may want to play music, and they'll continue to do so if that's what they enjoy. You can never guarantee stability on that side, as so insofar as they never prove that you can get a job in that thing. You then never go ahead and prove that you can succeed in those fields. They never go ahead and prove that you can get stable pay and guarantee success and stability for you in those fields. Why is stability very, very important? I think this is narrated to the middle class population. The people who are told to study are not the rich, because these guys can do whatever they want and still guarantee stability and happiness for their family. These are not the poor, because the poor can't afford to go to school every day. Which is say that I have, like, there are government schools which are set up in my own neighborhood where I live, but most poor kids don't even go there because they have to help their parents in whatever the jobs they're doing to make sure that bread is on the table that night for dinner, right? Which is say that these people aren't the ones who are going to school in of itself. It's primarily the middle class population. What is the main incentive of the middle class population? It is stability. 3 reasons why stability is the most important incentive for the middle class population. Number 1, I think you need financial security and predictability, right? I think this, like, if you have a consistent income, it allows you to meet your basic needs: housing, healthcare, food, etc., and plan for like long-term goals like retirement or home ownership. I think when you ensure this sort of financial predictability for you, it becomes like, it enables you to like manage your budget effectively and like live life stress-free enough itself, which is something that you aim for to a large degree. But secondly, I think it protects you from economic volatility, right? Oftentimes when these sort of market shocks and like economic volatility happens within your own nation, it's often the middle class who suffer, which is why you want to be risk averse and risk free, which means that stability is very important. You need a job where you can't get fired every time like a fluctuation occurs in the job market and things like that. You need like a sort of job where like demand is constantly there and feels like that. But thirdly, you probably have family and social responsibility. You have to show people in your neighborhood, you need to like feed your own family, things like this. And since family is seen as something that you have to go into, you need to have children and all to satisfy the social narratives which are propagated in middle class households. You need to make sure that you're able to feed them as well, because oftentimes you can only get married, only have kids if you have a stable paycheck and things like that. So oftentimes it's a matter of pride or like a social construct in of itself in these sort of things. How do we guarantee you a job as a middle class person who studies well? Context, I think since you're aiming for stability, you're likely to be pushed into fields that you can get stability as well, which means the majority of people who get a degree in fields that pay well, like and get jobs in fields like IT, electronics, medicine, and things like that, and are not going to liberal arts or like or gender studies or things like that, which don't have as much of a gender market, as much of like a job market in of itself, right? Why do you still guarantee a job in these fields? 2 reasons. I think number 1, market forces exist. Certain industries have greater demand from the general population, right? Which is that more people want like have more demand from fields like IT, more demand from fields like electronics, because they have more need of products which are in these sort of fields. You need to go to hospital, which is why you need more doctors, which is why more people are pushed into medicine, because the pay is better there. The reason the pay is better there is because more people go to hospitals, hence hospitals get more money. Note at the point in time that everyone can follow your passion, the number of people who go into medicine now is lesser, because these people probably have other passions and not all just like fans of biology. Not everybody goes to electronics is a fan of EC and electronics communication. Not everyone goes to IT is a fan of computer science. All these people have other passions and they all distribute into other fields like psychology, art, history, music, entertainment, whatever it be. The issue is this: two things happen here. Number 1, I think when people go in greater numbers to jobs that don't have high demand, they're going to get lower pay. Which is say that sure, like more people go into psychology, more people go into history, more people go into art, more people go into entertainment. But the issue is that not that much demand is not there in art and entertainment. Which is say that when you have a larger number of employees in a field, but the demand stays the same, and unless the government bench can prove that demand also increases, probably pay is going to decrease in of itself. Which means the average pay for these middle class people who follow their passions decreases on the comparative. But secondly, the number of people needed in high demand jobs reduces significantly, right? I think in high demand jobs, you need more people because these are more crucial industries in of itself. For example, the reason that more people are in tech, the more reason more people are in medicine is because you need larger workforces there. Oftentimes, you need more people because these are the places like it's crucial for people to go there and get treated in of itself, right? I think the point in time that lesser people go there, it becomes crucial for people in of itself. But secondly, I think the competition of the middle class and not the rich. I think the point of time that you go into these sort of study-oriented industries, you're competing with people who are middle class in of itself. The more time the more you go into niche industries, the more you compete with people who can go there. Like for example, rich people who often try to follow their passions, etc., and often go into these fields, etc., as well, right? And these people have access to more resources, which means that oftentimes your chance of success in these fields is comparatively lower. Why is a 9 to 5 job the best pathway to stability as a middle class person if you can guarantee you this 9 to 5 job? Note when mass number of people work for the same corporations, this is when corporations tend to be more flexible with the workforce in of itself, which is why like two reasons for this, right? I think number one, larger corporations when like larger number of employees go and collectivize over here in these same jobs. This is when you get health benefits, insurance coverage, and things like this. But secondly, larger corporations tend to be more resilient to economic shocks in of itself, which will say that if you all work for Microsoft can withstand like your average economic shock greater than startups in of itself, which will say that you have a more stable paycheck, you have a more stable income flow in of itself. Why is your chance of stability low when you follow your passion, which is a comparative which is never talked about on government? Note the number one, identifying your passion takes a lot of time. You have to try lots of interest to understand where your passion actually lies. But secondly, identifying your talent takes lots of time. You have to try lots of things to understand where it is that you're better than your competition at and where you actually have some sort of talent in. Note that identifying the intersection of both of these is almost impossible and oftentimes never even exists. Note at that point of time, it's extremely hard for you to decide where to go in of itself if you're not pushed into a certain thing. Is there a POI? There's only 10 seconds left if you want to ask one. Cool, seeing none. The second point is that saturation is met extremely early at things like art and sports. I think at the point and the demand is lesser, you need lesser actors within these industries. Unless you're super talented, it is impossible to succeed here, right? Which is say that I only need like 10 basketball players on the court and 100 people in the NBA. Like 5,000 extra people flocking here is not going to be any extra good because you don't have the demand or you don't have the need to see this many people there. Compared to that, you need 5,000 people in hospitals because you can help the general population to a much larger degree, which means that demand still exists here. Note that even if they want to run passion on government bench, I still never understand why you can't just do this as a hobby and still be happy on the side, right? But let's just assume in very worst case, which is the only set of people that you can actually cater to, that you're somebody who has recognized your talent, I recognize what your passion is, and it's like somehow happen to intersect. Why does it still not matter? Note the number one, the scale of people who are so passionate and talented together is so low compared to the number of people we can guarantee stability on opposition bench. But number two, the likelihood of you being somebody who is this passionate and this talented to listen to these sort of narratives itself is extremely low. But thirdly, I think you like if you're like somebody who's extremely talented in music and you have a passion in music as well, you probably go to music school. Everybody around you keeps giving you like counter narratives, which is that you should always like you should go follow your interest in music and things like that. The people who are propagating these narratives that you should go to an education job, etc., aren't in the circle around you or proximate enough to you for you to actually like be experiencing these narratives in the first place. Which means that even on those fronts, we win. For all these reasons, opposition bench.
All right, I thank the leader of opposition for that wonderful speech. I would like to invite Deputy Prime Minister to take on the floor now. Here.
Sorry, can I just have about like 40 seconds to organize my thoughts?
Sure.
Oh my God, wait. Okay. Am I visible and audible? Like, hello.
Yep, you're both.
All right. Let me just pull up my timer. Cool. I shall begin on my first word. I think so far opposition hasn't really been charitable in engaging with our case, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean that first of all, we're trying to posit to you, panel, that the metric of this debate is financial stability above all. They have capitulated back into the very mechanism that we inside government are trying to get rid of, right? Which is the self-justifying existence of capital by means of encouraging people to study such that they can work in a quote unquote better job, right? I think it's pretty much quite obvious and agreed on both sides that this narrative does not exist as a way to empower those who want, in the lower classes, for instance, to have a higher paying job in the future. I think it only does it to a very small extent, especially in more developed nations, right? And I see that, second of all, it is a mechanism used by those in upper classes to justify things like generational wealth, and the reason why, for instance, the richest people end up getting the most scholarships in most societies anyways, right? I see that at a point in which you're able to boil matters of capital accumulation and generational wealth down to whether or not you paid enough attention in class or whether you studied hard enough for certain tests, I think it's at that point we're able to very easily direct blame away from systemic factors like, for instance, like wage slavery and like the rich-poor divide in many nations, and towards these poorer people for them having not enough responsibility to study in the first place, right? I think to the extent to which side opposition tries to claim that this is actually the case of what happens on the ground, I don't really think they have a cogent understanding of what exactly happens in the society when narratives like this become dominant. Now, second of all, on the point about how economic stability is the one that matters above all, the market is going to cause decreases in jobs if people just follow their passions. How terrible, right? I point out that, first of all, these are highly utilitarian goals, which I think I'll respond to a bit more fully in my substantive. And second of all, I see that this overly pragmatic and like a practical understanding of how studies actually work is essentially like a degradation of what it actually means to accrue knowledge as a person, right? More on that in my substantive. And now the miscellaneous point on how like quote unquote counter narrative exists, the benefit on our side isn't really mutually exclusive. I can point out that these things are counter narratives precisely because the narrative towards like studying hard and getting a good job is the dominant one currently in society, right? I see at the point at which on our counterfactual, this dominant narrative no longer exists. There exist many other alternative narratives as to what exactly a person is going to find meaning in. That it just gives people a much greater diversity of choice as to what exactly they find meaningful, what they value in their lives. And because every person is subjective and their own personal experiences differ, it's much easier on our side of the house to have a vote that is more accommodating towards people. And conversely, on our side is also a vote in which people are free to challenge the ideas of what exactly a society should be and what exactly, for instance, social organizations should actually look like, right? And now onto the substantive, right? I think there are two main principal pushes in my speech today. First of all, why the end goal should be people and why studying shouldn't be seen as a means to an end. And second of all, why the end goal of a good job in itself is unmeaningful and therefore unproductive towards society. Yeah. So first of all, why the end goal should be people, right? I think that it's quite I think it's quite a simple argument to wrap your head around. I think there are two main mechanisms, right? First of all, we only live once, and the impetus is on us to find whatever that we find meaningful in life, right? Therefore, it means that you as a person, as soon as you enter a society with a very dominant narrative that coerces you into one particular method of finding purpose, that is a quote unquote good like job in the future. I don't think that is what we as a society respecting free will should be doing, right? And second of all, life in itself is non-consensual. Therefore, to impose a narrative of action upon us is unfair and disrespecting of our own volition. This means that you as a person should have the liberty to choose whatever you want to find purposeful and therefore partake in an action and not be restricted by, say, for instance, societal structures and like just narratives around what you actually should be doing with your time, right? And here's what the counterfactual on side opposition looks like. Basically, status quo, right? This narrative sees people and studying as very easy means to an end to attain a good job and therefore income in the future, right? And even if they argue that yes, you can find people are going to find their jobs still purposeful in some sense, I think the inclusion of the promise of high amounts of capital into the equation essentially serve to like diminish the meaning that you actually get intrinsically from a job, right? Because capital in today's society has been reduced to something that is used to buy commodities to chase another sort of like esoteric version of purpose. Now, what's the alternative on our side, Ross? The alternative on our side is that people can simply find whatever the hell they want to be purposeful and therefore like do that action, right? I think this aligns with, first of all, notions of free will that we currently uphold in our society, and jobs as more of like a side consideration. Even though we may not be able to change, for instance, like structures like wage slavery that keep people into like doing jobs for subsistence, we can very easily refocus people's attentions away from viewing jobs as the main source of purpose in their life and therefore submitting to their bosses. And like more importantly, focus their visions towards what they actually find purposeful in life, right? And I think at the end of the day, like the second like tag on harm that side opposition accrues on that side is that they deteriorate the very nature of study as a pursuit to meaning itself. I'll take a point in a moment. Yeah, okay, no, I'll take it now. We can move on to the second side.
what is the point if I have a lot of mental stability and I do what I like, but I don't have bread on my table?
Okay, I think the very easy justification for this, right, is simply like the hedonistic treadmill defense, right, which is that you as a person, if you can find something meaningful in life, are able to struggle against all other material constraints of your life, right? So, and I think that even on a more basic level, if at a point at which you are able to find even a quote unquote low paying job in the society today that you find meaningful, I think that most people would rather choose that option rather than having a good job if this narrative simply didn't exist. And now, second of all, why the end goal on subposition is bad, right? And why the utilitarian outcome is not what it's all jacked up to be, right? And second, I think that at the point at which you make the end goal a good job, I don't think this is exactly the ideal outcome in most people's lives, right? Because most people have at some point in their lives the awakening and the enlightenment of what it actually means to be a person, right? For instance, conceptions like money and conceptions like employment are things that are immaterial and won't follow you into the afterlife. Whereas we as humans, ever since our conception have had a striving towards more esoteric forms of enlightenment in life, right? Whether it be through religion, whether it be through academia, whether it be through philosophy. I think at the point at which you take one of those very main cause of people's struggles towards meaning in life, which is academia, and dilute it down into something that is purely practical and therefore guarantee something that is hard and cold and immaterial and impermanent in somebody's life. I think that's a point at which you diminish the potential for that to serve as the meaning towards most people's lives. Right? I see that, for instance, the reason why there are so few professors in today's society is because those people have been conditioned since birth to view it as something that doesn't really add anything of value to their lives, and therefore don't seek to find the intrinsic value within studying in general. So at the end of the day, what we promise on site government, I think that we promise two things, right? First of all, we preserve the sanctity of the act of studying in itself as a striving means towards meaning. And second of all, we allow a greater diversity of purposes and lives in general, accommodating the human spirit for what it is. Go aside, government.
I thank the speaker from government bench. I would like to invite a deputy leader of opposition to respond to that.
Great. Am I clearly audible and visible?
Yep, you're both.
Thank you. Hasan going deputy POIs through voice. I'm not against that. I'm going to do two things in my speech. I'll co-opt a lot of ops like Gov's benefits, and I'll prove to you why they have no pragmaticity and their arguments simply don't stand. They tell you that you want to find meaning of life because you live once and you shouldn't be coerced into doing something. But insofar as you can't guarantee benefits if you do follow your own passion, I'm unsure as to why that is something which most people would want to opt into. I think they never engage with Kevin's frame of how this is probably applicable to middle class people. Insofar as my incentive to get food on my table and actually get a stable job and actually have a means of livelihood to provide for my family is much more proximate to me than following something which I'm super passionate about. They never do weighing analysis on why my passion matters more to me than stability, but we do this to you explicitly in Kevin's speech when we tell you that most people who are middle class probably are not very passionate about something, but B, even if they are, it's very hard to actually find this out, and C, it's hard to find out something which you're passionate about and talented about, and then doing all of these intersections then means that you can actually go ahead and follow your passion. I think the portion on our side is very simple. You get pragmatic benefits, you get financial stability under our side of the house, which is most proximal to people. Insofar as you go and tell someone that if you do something which you're passionate about and you're going to get significantly lower amounts of money, they would rather choose to do something which they're not that passionate about, do a 9 to 5, but get money because that is something which is more proximal to people. Because with money, you can literally buy what you want. You can literally support your own family. You can get food on your table. But secondly, you can also follow your passion as a hobby. I'm unsure as to why we can't co-opt this under our side of the house. They tell you that there are systemic factors at which people which prohibit you from doing good inside of these particular jobs. You want to posit that this is symmetric to the point at which you still have symmetrically systemic factors in which people in the things which you're passionate about in of itself. But they tell you that material constraints are present and you are coerced into doing something. I want to note that middle class people are the people who are fed this narrative. The people who are super passionate and talented about something are not likely to opt into this narrative simply because it's not going to be proximate to them. They never engage on the frame of who actually interacts with this narrative and how it affects them on a day-to-day life. Notice that if I'm a student studying in school and my dad is probably not that rich, and my teachers tell me that the way for you to guarantee financial stability is if you study a lot and get a job, I don't see what is wrong in that, because I'm probably not passionate about something right now, but even if I am, it's probably better for me to do a job and actually get money and like be able to live a good life under our side of the house. I want to weigh financial stability on two metrics. One is on scale and two is on likelihood. Notice that on scale, the number of people who are passionate and actually know what they're talented in and get to follow it is very, very low compared to the number of people who are going to be forced to like compared to the number of people who actually opt into this narrative and get a job and are able to live for themselves. I think it is their burden to prove why you're able to guarantee some form of success when you actually go and follow your passion, which they never do. But secondly, on likelihood, the number of people who can actually get a breakthrough in the field which you're going for is very, very unclear. The comparative here is that either you study or you follow your passion. It might look like you go into a startup or you freelancing or you do things or you like going into art or music or something which you're super passionate about. I want to note that there are millions of people who want to be singers. There are millions of independent artists on Instagram who post reels of their music every single day. None of them make money simply because the market is so saturated that I'm unsure of how you get so lucky that are actually able to make it to the top and guarantee a living for yourself. To the point at which they don't prove to you how you're able to get the bare minimum of human need. I'm unclear as to why me feeling like or me following my passion and getting this like meaning of life out of my passion is something which I should care about. But I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to flip this argument and prove why you can have meaning in life under our side of the house as well. But before that, I want to posit that our narrative is logically prior to their narrative in and of itself, which is that if you like studying and getting a
Point.
is actually a stepping stone to you doing what you want and to you like doing what you're passionate about in and of itself. We want to posit that if you want to do a startup or if you want to freelance or if you want to do something which is non-traditional, then you probably need lots of exposure, which means you need to know how money works, you need to know how marketing works, you need to know how management works. You can do all of these things under our side of the house when you get study, when you like actually study, get a job, and then interact with
Point.
people, get more exposure of the world, you get more exposure of how markets work, how management works, things of that sort. You're actually able to do what you're passionate about. I'm unsure as to how you have the incentive or the capacity to follow what you're passionate about and actually get success there. There is no point in actualizing the meaning of my life if I'm not able to make a living out of it because I'm not going to have money in of itself. It was their burden to prove why you will be successful at something which you're so passionate about, given that we've given you structural reasons why it's super hard to do so in of itself. But flipping the idea of meaning in life, I think pursuing hobbies or trying to get a break is still possible under our side of the house. This is much better on weighing because you get stability plus the chance. Spending time with your family after your 9 to 5 is probably good. Life sucks either ways. They never prove to you why I'm going to be super happy just because I follow my passion. I can argue that even if I become a singer and I really love singing when I'm young, but when I do actually become a singer, there are a lot of problems which I face in life. The point at which life is never going to be perfect. If you're a very famous celebrity and you actually do achieve everything under this side of the house, you're still going to get paps following you all the way around. You won't have the freedom to go to a restaurant. All of these things are something which they never engage with. They just say that if you follow your passion, you're going to get the meaning of your life and live happily ever after. Happily ever after does not exist. Human beings are in like life inherently throws problems at you and you need to cope with it. I think what happens under our side of the house is that you start deriving meaning from the day-to-day experiences of your life. This is the essence of life and we're able to unlock that on off. Most people cope with the idea that I'm not able to do something which I'm super passionate about because I need to get money on my table, like food on my table. But secondly, that one beer with your girlfriend probably means a lot to you after your 9 to 5. The point at which you're able to actualize this meaning of life under our side of the house by probably enjoying your time with your family, so on and so forth, after your job or things like that. But secondly, I think you're able to co-opt this benefit, right? I'm not sure as to why, if you're so passionate about music that you want to pursue it as a career, why you're not able to do that under our side of the house. You can literally create reels on Instagram and post it and actually get actualization and meaning of life through this, which means that you're able to actualize and get the meaning of life under our side of the house as well, which then proves that this is symmetric. And the only push which they have is that why I don't understand why it is the tipping point that you need to do this for a living in and of itself. But B, I think they never prove to you why you're able to get a living out of it in the first place. I want to do some weighing here. Notice that on scale, the number of people who we are able to benefit, the number of people who actually study and get a job is much, much greater. But B, the likelihood of you getting a job when you actually study and try to get a job is much, much larger. I think they needed to do two things in this debate, which they failed to do. One, show why people are like why people are likely to be very passionate about what they want to do and actually get meaning in their life through what they do. But secondly, prove to you on scale why it is likely that these people are able to make a living out of the things which they want to do and why they're able to derive actual meaning and money through like whatever music or art or career you want to do. I think they're able to co-opt all these benefits by simply saying that you can do both. What the alternative or counterfactual probably looks like is that you don't tell people that you need to study to get a job. You tell them that it's okay to pursue art or music or things of that sort. Notice that this is inherently wrong because then you tell these people that you should do this, but you never give them a guided pathway to success and the likelihood of success under their side of the house is very, very low. I think it's very simple and intuition pump. It's much, much better for me to actually get a job which pays me more than to derive meaning of my life and not get paid in and of itself. I think they had the burden to prove this, which they never do to you for all these reasons. Oh.
All right. I thank Deputy Leader of Opposition for that wonderful address. I would like to invite Government Whip now to address the House. Here.
Am I visible and audible?
Yep, you're both, sir.
Right. I will start on my first one. I think we can all agree with the fact that side opposition is just really pitiful. Like I'm just looking at their arguments and I feel pitiful for them because of their narrow perspective of what is happiness in life, what is the meaning of life, and what is success in life. All right. I don't think opposition has ever wondered why a busker still busks on the street. You know, they have musical talents. Why don't they go pursue a job as a musician? Why do they still stick to busking on the streets? Because they like the job, all right? And so essentially what opposition has been claiming is that happiness comes from your stability in your life, right? And stability is attained from success, which is, in their words, attained from studying. So in their world, in their perfectionistic world, studying equals to getting a good job, and that job is said to be stable. And because of that financial stability, they are happy. Now, that is a rather narrow definition of happiness, don't you think? Like our side of the house has been proposing from the start that from our perspective, right? What is the definition of life, right? Do you really want to be stuck in a hedonistic treadmill doing doing something that you don't like for the rest of your life just because you're materialistic and you want money? Like you can be happy in life. Like you can earn less money from your job but still be happy in your life because you're doing something that you really like. That is the epitome of pursuing your passion, right? And that is why millions of people on Earth continue to challenge the status quo by say pursuing their passion instead of sticking to the status quo and going for some lame job that opposition wants them to do just because of financial stability, right? And that does not necessarily mean that they are unable to attain success, financial success, since opposition is so dominant on proving that financial success is key to happiness in life, right? There's a lot of examples in the world whereby people, they their parents may want them to become a doctor or a lawyer or a banker, but they have a passion, say, in sports or in being a musician or in gaming. And they go against the status quo of society, go against this very narrative of how studying will definitely get you a good job, which, by the way, it doesn't, right? Which my speakers have already mentioned. And they have attained financial success. I mean, one very prominent example is Mr. Beast, among others as well, right? Now, just to address how studying doesn't necessarily mean you get a good job. I think what opposition has been lacking in their argument the whole time is that there's a loophole, right? Studying is the start point. Getting a good job is the end point. Of course, like proposition's not going to deny the fact that, okay, if you get a good job, you're going to be financially stable. But just because you study doesn't mean you get a good job. Like you can get a diploma, a degree, but at the end of the day, you can still be rejected from like the job that you're applying for. Like, and I feel like this is the loophole. Like we believe that this is the loophole that opposition has yet to like address. And in their argument, they're just randomly like assuming the fact that okay, whoever studies, they are able to get a good job. Like, are you insinuating that, say, let's say everybody in the world studies hard, studies the same degree to become a doctor? Are you saying that everybody's going to be guaranteed to get a doctor? No. There are people who say study law, but at the end of the day, they work as something else or they are unable to get their dream job, right? So that's the difference, right? And as such, you can't possibly say that the narrative of studying guarantees that you get a job. And as such, you cannot even guarantee from your side of house that you can guarantee like happiness that's defined. Like you can't guarantee your financial stability. You cannot, and therefore you cannot guarantee happiness in your life, right? Now, opposition has brought up the fact that okay, some people in the world, they can stick to their lame jobs and do hobbies on the side. They say hobbies are an avenue for people to pursue passion. But from outside of the house, right? It sounds like they're telling people They just channel all of their passion into hobbies, just something that they do in their free time. But that is not the purpose of life, right? In your life, you do what you are most passionate about, and that is something that makes you happy, right? If you're gonna be stuck in a 9 to 5 job in random office, doing work, slaving away as the days go by, like you can't possibly tell me that you're gonna be happy unless unless everybody in the world's perception of happiness is just, oh, you're gonna get a paycheck at the end of the month and you can fulfill your happiness via materialistic means. No. In fact, like I feel like we believe that the definition of money in our world should just be like to facilitate your daily needs, right? That is enough for a human's like daily living, right? But what we need to do, like this entire debate shouldn't be focused on financial stability. It shouldn't be focused on the stability of a job, right? The fact that the job is so stable proves that it's such like a rigid structure, and that is not how we are meant to live our lives. Our lives are meant to be led in a more flexible manner, right? It's more fluid. As time goes by, things will change. Things are ever changing in our life, and we have to be more dynamic. We have to be more flexible to adapt. Now, what opposition is proposing is that we stick to our rigid stances, we stick to our rigid jobs, and hope that in the name of financial stability, we get to live our lives in a happy manner. Now, that's just not the case. My previous two speakers have already driven the point that is like studying should purely be for the acquisition of knowledge. You shouldn't be giving people the false hope that you're going to get a good job just purely from studying. There are many different factors that come between studying and getting a good job, which opposition didn't address at all. We have also thoroughly emphasized the fact that this narrative is discriminating, it is intensive, and it is narrow, and it alienates people from finding their real purpose in life, which definitely isn't money, it is their passion. And opposition has repeatedly neglected people's passion, right? So the thing is, if you're one who just believes that money leads to happiness in your life, then sure, side with side opposition. But if you're one who has a dream, has a passion, and okay, like if you have something that you like in your life, you shouldn't be siding with them. Side with side government, the true side that deserves to win this debate, the true side that addresses all clashes, both ours and theirs, and yeah, we prove to you that pursuing a passion is the true purpose of life. Therefore, side with side gov.
I thank GovWeb for that passionate speech regarding passion. I would like to invite OpWeb to respond to that. Here.
Am I clearly audible?
Yep.
Athar going way. I'll take POIs around fifth. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Be a middle class person without food on the table, struggling to pay your rent. You'll realize that a more proximate meaning to life is like a full stomach. Insofar as opposition can never prove any sort of mechanism within their frame as to why passion is something that like far outweighs these more proximate concerns, we win this debate. But what I'm going to do in this speech is simple. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to completely take down this entire passion business and this entire passion incentive. And I'll secondly prove to you why you probably still lead like a meaningful life, even if you like buy into our narrative. I think the biggest clash in this debate is what is like a more important incentive to an average person. I think there are two incentives, A on passion, B on stability. I think we proved to you why stability is much better on our side, but I'll focus on why like this passion is probably not as important a metric to judge this debate. I think four things, right? A, Kevin tells you lesser people are just naturally going to be able to find their passion in life because they like you have to like come across a lot of things. So we simply win it on scale. But secondly, understand that even if you find your passion in life, you probably are the point at which like I like music, but I have to do music for 10 hours a day or 15 hours a day to like get good at music or to make a living off of it. I probably am going to start hating music, right? Insofar as like music is something that brings me a lot of utility, that's why I did it in the first place. Now the same thing that like brought me joy as an 8-year-old, I start hating that thing. I start hating my life. I start hating like my because like my life is completely different. But I think thirdly, we tell you about proximity, right? I think human beings naturally are a lot more risk averse. We want some sort of stability. We want some sort of like a rooftop over our head. to just like protect ourselves. So I think we simply win there. But like I think fourthly, quickly responding to some of the things that like Gov has to tell us, right? They tell us like you probably study for a reason under their paradigm. I'm unsure why people want to study for a reason under their paradigm. Why is a person probably interested in doing this thing? And why is the principle of studying for like a reason? Why is it like so impactful over like genuine utilitarian benefits we go ahead and give you? But I think this is where like Kevin's entire push of like you going and studying something like say history is not going to be as lucrative for you because you necessarily don't know a lot of things. But I think this is a common theme in this debate. You get structural reasons for things on our side. We like go ahead and mechanize things for you, whereas you get just flowery and like assertions from op and they tell you that oh life there's more to life than this. There are no assertions. There's no structural reasoning. Please don't credit these assertions. But like onto this entire idea of coercion that BM talks about, I think three responses. A, you probably don't like the simple intuition pump for this is somebody is not allowed to take drugs because like if you take drugs you probably cannot come back from it, right? So like I think similar to that, probably like if you are doing something that's not necessarily going to benefit you, insofar as we are able to benefit this person through like better financial stability, we still like are better off. But secondly, and the more obvious response, it's a narrative. A person probably doesn't need to buy into this. He can like do something else. Like if he's actually passionate about music, he will actually go into it. That's what we tell you. But I think thirdly, onto this idea of like discrimination existing and like how we're like a more discriminatory side. Yes, but I think we're probably still better off insofar as we can ensure that like more people have some basic resources. I think Gov case at its best ensures that like five people are like live extremely fulfilling lives instead of like two people that live extremely fulfilling lives in our status quo. But insofar as we can ensure the rest of the 95 people live like at least a decent caliber of life, we win this debate simply like on scale. But I think on this idea that comes at PM of like a discrimination existing between different jobs. The idea is like probably like a policeman is going to be viewed more negatively because like CS and IT people make more money, etc., etc. I think firstly, a policeman is probably still an integral part of the society. You need these jobs to function. So these people are probably still going to be viewed with respect because like society just foils without them. But I think secondly, and the more intuitive response, not everybody probably ends up becoming a lawyer and doctor. Understand like our case centers on like middle class people. Most middle class people don't have the resources to break into fields like finance, to become lawyers. And they're probably going to like some of them probably break into these fields, but the majority of these people, even after studying, probably are going to like break into field like more lower class jobs, and probably because simply because of like the competition in a lot of these big jobs and the resources needed, which a lot of these people don't have. But before that, I'll quickly take a POI. 3, 2, 1. Cool. Secondly, proving as to why there's probably still a lot more meaning on our side. I think this is where Hasan's extension of hedonism simply comes in, right? I think we go ahead and tell you that even in our paradigm, the small, relatively insignificant moments of life are still things that can bring you joy and utility. Gov response to this is simple. Oh, you're just simply making life a hedonistic treadmill. I think what we go ahead and tell you is we're okay with life being a hedonistic treadmill insofar as like most people can still derive utility from this hedonistic treadmill. There is no like engagement from op on this paradigm, right? I think, but secondly, this is like a big problem at Gov, right? I think it's a problem of frame. They've modeled this debate as to be in a world where like everybody has that financial security, has that financial backing where they can go ahead and do whatever they want to do. I think their case probably is better for say a rich person who has the resources to like protect himself, but for the average person who probably doesn't have those resources, our case is much better. But I think where what Hasan does in his speech is goes ahead and flip all of the impacts that come out on Gov in terms of like following your passion. I think what Hasan tells you is simple. You probably still need things like work ethic to like achieve things, right? You probably need to have some sort of a work ethic to like go ahead and like be successful even if you're a musician, and it is only likely that you get this work ethic when you like at a young age you probably study. the lack of this narrative probably looks like younger kids probably not studying and not just like loitering around and doing random things, right? Insofar as our narrative provides these like kids with a structure to do things, it becomes more likely that when they go ahead, they like become older, they have like the tools to achieve success in their field of passion. Insofar as we're the only house that can ensure stability, we win this debate. Proud to pose.
With that, we come to the end of the constructive part of the debate. To start with the reply round, I would ask the op reply speaker to start with their speech.
Cool. Am I audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. At the top of my speech, I want to start by thanking GovWhip for his pity for us. Because unlike most of us in this meeting, GovBench seems to have the superhuman ability to be flat out broke with no food in their belly, but happy at the same time since they have a paintbrush in their hand. But the main reason GovBench actually loses this debate is because GovBench does not have a positive case. At no point in time do they give you a pathway as to how you get any utility on their side of the house. The best mech that they actually have is name dropping Mr. Beast in GovWhip. The first and only attempt that at a response that comes from is at GovWhip, where he says you cannot guarantee getting a job even if you study. Note that they have no mech for why this is so. They just assert it, but I'll still deal with it because it's the only place they even attempt to engage in the first place. Two responses to this. A, this is a comparative debate. You cannot guarantee getting a job if you study, but the chance of you getting a job on the comparative paradigm where you're following your own passion, since it's saturated markets, is even lesser, which means at the point in time that you have to, you are prioritizing stability, you probably get it on our side of the house. But B, I can easily flip this response on to them and say that you can't guarantee finding your true passion on their side of the house either, right? Which means at the point in time, it's a comparative debate. It's based on likelihood as to where you can find it better in of itself. So if they want to prove it, they have to give some sort of mech. The PM frame is that you follow your passions, but no speaker on Gov can show how that leads to stability for you as a middle class person. We have given you mechs from LO onwards as to how we get this stability on op through 95 jobs, and we never got a proper response to the entirety of this debate. The only response that came was in DPM, which is that rich people have more resources, so it is hard to succeed. Two responses to this. A, this is at worst symmetric because rich people can go into any field, including the one that you have a passion in. Just say if you decide to become a musician, probably some rich person's daughter is also going to become a musician and can beat you there as well because she has auto-tune or whatever high-class resources that she has in a recording studio, and she's going to beat you over there as well, which means it's symmetric there. But B, how many rich people are going to engineering or medicine or IT as compared to other niche passions like following their own passions in music, movies, entertainment, and things like that? Which is to say, if you follow your passion, you're more likely to encounter these people, rich people's kids, who have these sort of resources, etc., as compared to competing with middle class people who often flood the markets in engineering and medicine, which means that competition is more likely to be balanced in the fields that we are talking about in the first place, which came up in LO but never got a response again. Note that everything that we argue goes unrebutted regarding how market forces work, how corporations are likely to give you benefits, how finding your passions and what you're talented in takes a lot of time, and how those passions tend to be in fields that are highly saturated and often never intersect with what you're talented in. None of this got any engagement. The only push that exists on Gov after this is two principal pushes on DPM. But note that this is useless as well because there's no point running principles in a debate unless it has some utility rooted in it, because other than that, I don't know how you're supposed to weigh it in of itself. But we'll just engage with it because I don't think there's anything that they have apart from this. Principle one, you need meaning in life. Why is this more important than stability is never told to me throughout the debate, and we have given you structural reasons in LO as to why stability is the priority of the middle class. But let's just assume for now that meaning in life is what the biggest priority of the middle class is, even though I'm doubtful that is. But let's just assume that it is. I never understand why this is exclusive to their side of the house. Two reasons for this. Number one, you can still find do these passions as a hobby, but B, you can still find joy and meaning in your day-to-day life. Hasan gives you a hedonistic treadmill argument in his debate in his speech, which never got any engagement. Which is say that sure, my dad is 40 years old and he doesn't play football or basketball or even record his own songs, but he's still happy in life because he has two kids and he spends time with them on a day-to-day basis, right? I think at the point in time that you have family, you have these small pleasures in life, you can probably be passionate and find meaning in these small things in life as well. I'm unsure. I'm highly doubtful that every middle class person who's studying in life doesn't have any passion in today's world, right? I think that's a very uncharitable thing to say in of itself. But principle two that he runs in DPM is that everyone should have the choice to choose what they want. Hence, this narrative is bad. two responses to this. A, nobody's taking away your free will to choose. It's just a narrative. Lamine Yamal isn't sitting listening to this narrative because he has identified his talent and passions. The people who are actually proximate and listening to this are people who haven't identified their talent and passions and are actually like exploring what to do in life in of itself. But B, if this principle actually works in this debate, I can just run this principle in any this house regrets the narrative motion, because like because according to their logic, all narratives tell us what we should do and hence take away our free will. Hence, like me running this principle should win me any narrative debate because it takes away our free will in of itself. Like it's a bogus response, right? But even then, I think the most important thing in this debate is what can get you some sort of stability, because we have proven that that's what's most important to you. You need food in the belly before you can like have a smile on your face. I think at the point of time that we can achieve only these things on op, and you don't even have a remote pathway on gov that we can even rebut. It's a clear op-win. For all these reasons, opposition bench.
All right, I thank the speaker for that speech. Now I invite the last speaker of this final debate, Gov reply. Here.
Hey, am I audible?
Yep.
All right, cool. On my first word then. Honestly, I want to send my deepest condolences to the opposition bench, because they have literally fallen prey to this narrative that side government speaks so passionately about in society. I hope you really enjoy slaving at your academics. I hope you enjoy studying out of purely obligation while I'm pursuing my life goals and actually doing what I want, right? All right, so they talk a lot about stability to you guys. Man, honestly, I think we just need to take a step back and consider what stability should actually mean, right? We think that being stable shouldn't just be your job, but it should also be in your interests. They literally push to us the fact that your life is unstable because of you not studying. They are clearly victims of the exact narrative we're debating on today. Stability is supposed to be about you. We think that principally you as a person should 100% adhere to what you want to do with your limited time on earth, what you want to do with your limited time as a functioning person, not reduce yourself to a tool that's just simply meant to soak up as much information as possible, never apply it, and just use it to try and make as much money as possible, just because society has glorified it so much, right? We think that opposition acts as if without this narrative, there's 100% going to be absolutely no studying. Everybody's going to be a dropout. Nobody's going to give nobody's going to give a hoot about their studies, right? But honestly, that's not really the case, because schools and compulsory education can still exist on our side. The difference is simply that you take the classes and you put in the hours because you yourself still want to know more and to help yourself, not simply for money. Like historically, females were so grateful when they got to participate in education at first, because they just simply wanted to level up, because they wanted to have a chance to better themselves. But people used to study because they believed in knowledge, right? That's the point. Then when times evolved and more people suddenly had access to education, it became something that people had to be competitive in because of this narrative. This narrative is what constantly pushed to us that now that you have an education, you need to be overly competitive in it. And we think that this is what took away the actual light of learning, right? And we think that, honestly, the issue that we're debating today isn't that people are studying hard. It isn't the fact that people actually just want to give their 100% in their studies, right? The issue we're debating is what exactly the motivation is. And we think that it's an incredibly toxic motivation to just be wanting to get a good job. The motivation should just be intrinsically wanting to better yourself, because that will actually lead to you being satisfied with what you learned, lead to you applying what you learned, and lead to you learning something that is actually very relevant to you. If I was interested in the arts, I'd obviously take an arts class because that's what actually is going to help me, rather than taking a medicine class because society tells me that that makes more sense, right? I think that you're not going to die. And also they keep telling you about how you're just not going to have food on the table. I think that this is honestly such a huge exaggeration, because there's so many more avenues to earn money that will definitely get you a livelihood, that will definitely keep you alive. Just because I'm not studying and getting my straight A's in political sciences or in medicine doesn't mean that I'm going to have nothing to eat, right? I'm honestly still going to have some base of livelihood, and that livelihood will be spent a lot better because I'm actually happy, right? They say that we should pursue things that we like as mere hobbies, but we think that the sole fact that they suggest using it as a hobby suggests to us that they acknowledge how much it would mean to us, and they acknowledge how important it is for us to have an avenue to pursue it in, and an avenue to put our passion into it, right? And we think that on our side, if it means so much to you that you would use it as a hobby, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that being your sole purpose of life, what you use your time to pursue and what you give yourself to, right? We think that if people's life purpose for themselves is to get big bucks, to be a valedictorian, they're more than welcome to go ahead and do it, right? But what we care about is the motivation. We don't have an actual issue with the fact that people are pursuing law and medicine. We have an issue with the reason that they're choosing to pursue that. And I think that has to be very clear for side opposition, because they act as if we're just against studying as a whole. They haven't really engaged with us on our point about like motivation, on our point of how it ruins the principle of studying, because they're just trying to make raw assertions that stability is the only thing that matters. And I don't think they've proved to us how that's the metric. And let me just remind you, the metric for this debate should simply be who can prioritize the sanctity of studying and people's interests with that very, very clear side government.